Hello again, Hawks. Welcome to week 2 of art class with Mr. Johnson. Today we're going to be talking about value. Value is going to be the difference between light and dark. If I'm working with markers, then my job is easy. If I want a dark value, I choose a dark marker. If I want a light value, I choose a light marker. The limitation of markers is no matter how hard or light I push, the color or the value that I get is the same. There's no lightness and darkness to ink. So we're going to be practicing value using softer materials that can be adjusted in terms of value because of the pressure you use. If we go back to kindergarten and we start thinking about crayon work, if you take a crayon and you push down hard, you get a nice solid color. If I keep working with my crayon and I adjust my pressure and I gradually push more lightly, even though I'm doing the same motion or the same size of marks, if I push less hard, then I get a lighter value. We're going to work with this concept and we're going to be focusing on pencil. So you can see here I have a darker value where I push harder, and I have a lighter value where I push the lightest. You may have done a value scale in a different art class. This is what we're going to practice for today's lesson. It's going to be quick and relatively painless. I'm going to draw a rectangle on a scrap of paper, and I'm going to divide that rectangle in half, and divide that half in half, and divide that half in half. If your 4 sections are not perfectly identical, it's no big deal. We want to do a scale showing the values from the lightest to the darkest. You will want to have a nice sharp pencil, but at the same time, before we get started with this, I'm going to come over here on the side and scribble really hard just to soften up the edge. Now, when I start working on my lightest value, I'm going to be doing no big scribbles. That is the enemy right now. We want to avoid that. Some of us have learned when we are doing light values to hold the pencil out here and do one of these. Scribbly is bad. So what we want to do instead, we take that nice flattened out edge from our pencil, and we can either do short back and forth lines or we can do small overlapping circles, and we're going to apply really light pressure. My goal when I do this pressure is to have the same value all the way through the box. You guys will notice that this is not a fast method, but I get nice thorough results, meaning everything is looking pretty much the same. I'm holding my pencil so that it's just barely touching the paper, and I'm trying to concentrate on small, consistent back and forth lines or small overlapping ovals. Okay, you guys will notice there's some of these darker rows here in between. If you want, you can lightly go over the top of those, and my goal is not to make it much darker, but my goal is to even out that value. Kind of eliminate the difference between some of the lighter and darker spots. So there's my lightest value. You'll also notice I didn't fill in that box completely perfectly. That's okay. As long as the majority of the box is there and it's a pretty consistent value, you are good. Next box over, I'm going to repeat the same motion, short back and forth lines or small overlapping ovals. This time I'm going to apply a little bit more pressure. And you guys will notice, if you're anything like me, when we start to get to these darker values, it's actually a little bit easier. So I'm pushing a little bit more firmly, a little bit more pressure. I'm trying to force myself to concentrate on doing short back and forth lines or small overlapping ovals. It's tempting when you're pushing a little harder to make bigger loops. And again, I'm not stressed out about leaving some gaps there as long as most of this is filled up. So I'm starting to see this scale between my lightest and then one step darker. This is going to be pure black, where I'm going to push the most. So here in between, I need to be darker than this box here, but still not pure black. We're saving that for the darkest value. So once again, I want to be disciplined and force myself to keep those pencil marks the same all the way through. I'm also enjoying the fact that the end of the pencil is now kind of ground down to a nice flat surface, which is making it even easier for me to do nice, smooth rows. And again, you can see there's a little bit of overlap where those darker edges are. I can always come back in lightly and soften that up. And possibly the easiest part, we come over to the darkest box, pushing down really hard. Nice, pure, solid black with my pencil. And again, short back and forth lines, or tight overlapping ovals or little loops. And what I want to avoid is any big swirlies like that. And if we miss some spots, we come back in and fill it in. Okay, and at this point, for our first day, in the same way that we use a crayon with heavy pressure for a dark value and gradually lighter pressure for a lightest value, we have a 4-value scale from lightest to darkest or darkest to lightest. That's your goal. Give that a practice. This skill that is either a review or maybe it's new, this skill of having different values is going to help us on our next project as we move through the week.